Добрый день.
Hello again.
Меня зовут Елена Пономарева, Positive Technologies.
Name is Elena Ponomareva with Positive Technologies, and let me start out by saying the following. You see the QR codes here. If in the course of my presentation you have any questions, please do not hesitate. And yes, it's a good opportunity for you to scan the QR code. And there is a button there to ask your questions to the speaker, and we'll try to answer your questions if we can.
Что мы сегодня будем
don't be
обсуждать,
shy.
что я вам сегодня расскажу?
What
Расскажу
shall we be
вам
talking
о
about?
нашей сервисной модели
I'm here to tell you
о том,
about
как мы
our
его
service
позиционируем,
model,
что это новый
about how we
ITIL в мире
position
соков,
it as the
вообще
new
расскажу,
ITIL
что
in the
это
world of
такое,
SOC.
зачем оно вообще нужно и как мы к этому пришли. Немного расскажу о себе для начала. В кибербезопасности я свыше 10 лет занимаюсь.
I've been in the world of cybersecurity for over a decade. I've been looking at various processes related to building the right process, their re-engineering and transformation. Now, all this is obviously done by my team. Now, if you've been exposed to process implementation, you certainly know how much pain is there. We've seen it all.
Сейчас я вам расскажу, что из этого мы вынесли.
Now I'll tell you what we've learned.
Ключевые элементы SOC или ЦПК все прекрасно
Now, the
знают,
key
да,
elements of SOC,
технологии, наша любимая триада.
everybody knows this, people, process, and
Но
technologies.
как сделать так, чтобы эта триада на самом деле работала? Мы долго думали, смотрели различные.
And how do we make sure that, this triad actually works? We considered it for a long time, really, because we didn't really want the implementation of the proper process take forever. That's why we considered other practices. That's why we've checked out ITIL, something that has been used by our IT brothers for such a long time. And we found a particular method there which seems to apply very well to cybersecurity. Now, why are we interested in this service-based approach? So, service-oriented approach is effectively a concept of service provision, which is primarily targeting the end users, the business users. Effective cybersecurity sort of by default is driven by the concerns of the business. That's why we keep talking about inadmissible events. I guess you all know that, but, since everybody's talking about it now, I should probably give the definition. When I say inadmissible events, these are obviously the events that happen in the cyberspace. So this is something that can result in the organization defaulting on its strategic objectives due to, say, cybercrime or a threat actor wreaking havoc in your system. So, in order for such events to be prevented, we create an SOC. Now, what's the difference between a cybercrime prevention or a cybercrime fighting center? Rather, it's not cybercrime, but cyber threats.
Только по количеству инцидентов оцениваем свою эффективность, да, здесь немного другой подход.
In a center like this,
что не должно произойти недопустимое событие. Поэтому мы называем его ЦПК.
We are not concerned so much about the total number of incidents, but we are certainly concerned about making sure that specific events never happen.
Можно рассматривать как совокупность сервисов.
We realized that such a service for battling cyber threats is kind of something that should be based on both the service and the process models, but service comes first. In our experience, this is not very popular in the industry because for a long time, companies have been mostly concerned about compliance.
Что еще хотелось бы сказать про сервис? Не надо
What I should also say here is that, I'm talking here about services, but there are different types of services.
Это прежде всего
Now, the
регулярная
services
деятельность
I'm
команды
talking
ВПК,
about here is, a regular activity of your SOC team performed in a particular area.
и, соответственно, она направлена
I will give you examples
на
to
интересы
make
конкретной
myself clear.
организации.
So it serves the interests of a particular organization. It has a clearly defined scope. It also has, measurable KPIs and quality indicators. Like if you can measure quality, your consumers will be happy, or consumers are business people for sure, because they have their concerns and they want to make sure that the events that keep them awake at night do not happen. Now, shown here is the service model, and it currently covers 21 services. You can see that we listed these services in groups or categories. We have a total of 7 categories, and you can see that they span different domains of cybersecurity.
Стандартные подходы, традиционно использовались только мониторинг.
Now, traditionally, we would be thinking about, say, monitoring, investigation, and incident response, not the way it's done here. First one is management of assets and vulnerabilities, and next we have, say, monitoring, and we obviously need to continue enriching our platform with expertise, and we also need to boost the skills of the users and the team, and practical checks are certainly there all the time. And naturally, operational and strategic management are also a must. So 7 baskets or 7 categories here, and shown here are all the technologies that we need in order to automate all these services. You can also see in the same slide all the external IT services, and yes, it sort of goes without saying that InfoSec and IT should work very closely together, hand in hand. And IT people are certainly used to this service mindset. Our discussions with the IT people can sometimes be difficult, but having this service mentality certainly helps.
Если мы поговорим о целях, задачах, цель все-таки...
As regards goals and objectives of such a service model, well, certainly we want to have a unified approach that will enable us to deliver high service quality, to make sure that the inadmissible things
мы выделили. Это единый подход к функциям, понятные измеримые результаты и четкие границы и области.
So we certainly want to have clearly defined boundaries and clearly described results. When I say a unified approach, what does that mean? Well, naturally, we want all services to be described in the same way. And when I say described, I do not mean it should be like SOPs and regulations. You can easily use a wiki or some other maybe proprietary tool, as long as you have a shared understanding of the structure. Why do we need that? Well, because we want everybody to be part of the same kind of environment and have the shared understanding. Naturally, you want to have measurable results. Every service should have a result associated with it. Otherwise, what kind of value is there to it?
Если четкие границы и область сервиса мы рассматриваем, то если мы поговорим, например, про сервис контроля IT-активов,
for example, a service like IT asset control and monitoring, well, it obviously requires understanding of the expense of our infrastructure, the kind of systems we're monitoring, number of users, number of, the specific list of external integrations. This sort of goes without saying. Now, shown here is the desired to be state. The key elements here are transparency. Everything is clearly described. Everybody knows what they're expected to do.
SLA, OLA, все.
And then, with SLAs and OLAs, they are able to perform all actions needed. Now, if we want our SOC to work well and reliably, we certainly need a close-knit team. And it correlates very well with the previous item about transparency. If every function is clearly described and has its own task tracker, and everything is done inside the task manager, well, you won't need to run after people and ask them, when they're going to deliver, because it's pretty easy to structure all collaborations. And people get new things on their plate sort of automatically. Repeatability. Everything we have agreed upon is clearly listed. For the InfoSec team, for the business users, all this is shown in the SLAs.
С чего же начать?
And where do we start?
Нужно посмотреть тот перечень
Well, first, we gotta check out the list of functions and tasks that we want to address.
Нужно посмотреть на каталог
Next,
сервисной модель.
we need to take a look at the service catalog model.
Что вы можете реализовать прямо
Like, you
здесь
need to
сейчас, да,
decide
для чего вам
what you
могут
can implement here and now,
дополнительные ресурсы.
what potentially may require
Далее
additional
мы переходим уже
resources.
непосредственно к планированию очередности реализации.
And then, you can start planning the sequence of implementation steps. There is no need for you to,
Очень важно обратить внимание на то,
launch
что
several dozen services simultaneously.
сервисную модель делить, во-первых, на очередности.
Our recommendation is that your service model is sort of staged and that you operate in sprints. Like, you grab one service, you try it out, you talk to the IT people, you get their feedback, you run a workshop, and you launch it. After that, you discover what kind of fine-tuning is required, and you can do, the same with regard to the next service. And finally, you do adaptation and continuous improvement. Again, this goes without saying. If you do something today, you obviously need to kind of do regular updating.
Как я говорила ранее, мы для себя поняли, из чего же должен вообще состоять.
We have realized what a proper service should consist of. We've talked about categories, K21 services, like I said, 7 categories, from asset and vulnerability management to having this operational and strategic management. Now, what are the functions? Well, functions are specific operations or activities you need to perform in order for the service to run. One service does not represent a single function. You can have like 10 to 20 different functions under the hood of a single service. Data? So these are the building blocks of every service we're looking at. Now, this is the data a function will require. So, for example, you have, say, a questionnaire.
Если мы говорим про интеграцию,
that would be a case of that. Now, integration.
Все сервисы должны взаимодействовать между собой.
Naturally, all services should be able to talk to each other.
Интеграция в актуальном состоянии.
So you need to make sure that all integrations are up to date. Tools-wise, element 4. Now, this could be PDQL filters or whatever you may need, or the function implementation. Parameters. They are related to the metrics and SLAs and, say, regularity of running your services and so on.
В чем же ценность, да, сейчас?
Now, what's the value of a service model?
Перейдем к блоку вопросов. Первое и основное, все говорят о том, что у нас сейчас очень жесткий кадровый голод, да.
Now, everybody says that the industry is strapped for talent, so difficult to find good people, even more difficult to retain them. Retraining them is also tough. So if you have this approach where everything is very clearly defined, where regularity is indicated and so on, you are sort of guaranteed predictable results. And it also means reduced workload for your people. Because everything is clearly described, you have everything in a task manager, you will not have to guide everybody. And, if you have it as a wiki and you give links to people, they can learn on their own. This way,
Помогаем им погрузиться также и для...
New employees can be onboarded,
Если что-то новое добавляется,
and current employees can say learn faster about a new service that you launch.
21 сервис, который у нас сейчас есть сервисные модели, они
We've got
позволяют
21 services in the service model at the moment,
те самые недопустимые события, которые...
and they are there to ensure that inadmissible events do not happen.
Немного покажу сейчас карточку и передаю...
Let me show the card briefly,
Вижу, что...
then turn to Q&A.
Пример карточки мониторинга взяли.
Now, this is an example of a monitoring card. Why monitoring? Well, because we're talking about the SOC of the future, where monitoring should be very important.
Здесь мы четко сфокусировали, что такое область сервиса, да? Мы понимаем, что у нас есть...
We start here with a description of the service area. Next, we show the input parameters, which can come from conjoined services, and some parameters need to be thought about at first. So they're all shown here in the card. Now, the so-called service boundaries.
Интеграции и прочие вещи.
Now, we also need to consider here various integrations. And that requires understanding the boundaries of the service, right? Now, results and metrics, I think they're shown pretty in a lot of detail here, so that it's easy for people to check them out.
Технологии, все, что можно использовать,
technologies.
приведено на основе продуктов позитива, да.
So what you see here is a specific example which relies heavily on positive technologies products, but obviously so many other products are. So I'm sorry, I forgot to mute my phone. How embarrassing.
Но можно брать и адаптировать сервисную модель.
So obviously you can use our products, but certainly the service model can support other products as well. And our effects is everything you will need to implement this or that service. External services.
Для того, чтобы можно было понимать, а что же нам потребуется еще.
Now, obviously, these are the external things you will need for the system to work. Vladimir? What about questions?
Есть вопросы. Первый вопрос.
We've got some.
В чем разница вашего подхода со стандартом ITIL?
Now, what makes your approach different from ITIL?
Ну,
Wow.
ITIL вообще ориентирован исключительно на
ITIL, like for starters, ITIL is an IT thing. ITIL is not really used for information security purposes. Now, we got inspired by the general structure of ITIL. However, we used it primarily for the purposes that InfoSec people resonate with. So, yes, we retain the ITIL structure, and we wanted to have the same level of coverage.
Какое место в сервисной модели занимают атомарные действия?
What's the role of atomery, so to speak?
Командные действия.
Actions.
Атомарные действия.
Atomery. Oh, right.
У нас все зашиты в функции.
Individual actions are built into functions. So if you take a look at the list of functions for this or that service, you will see how often you need to perform a particular operation.
Те, которые мы делаем,
Some happen regularly, and some are kind of one-off. They're ad hoc, so to speak.
Хорошо. И
Okay.
еще вопрос. А почему в сервисах ЦПК нет
How come
Ведь SOC
business is not shown as part of your SOC services?
смотрели презентацию. Сейчас я вам...
Well, it probably means that you didn't follow my presentation closely. Let me flick... I'm sorry, Okay, it's okay. I'll just give you the brief answer.
У нас есть операционный стратегический менеджмент предоставления...
So we have this operational strategic management, item 7, the unit at the top.
Там и зашито то самое взаимодействие с бизнесом.
So interaction with business is part of that. Naturally, business is not gonna support any strategic development unless they understand what exactly that you do. So we start out by listing those inadmissible events. So before we build our SOC, we first talk to business in order to understand what they consider critical.
Поэтому все это зашито. Также
So it's all part of the model for sure.
посмотрим дальше. в блок управления активами и уязвимостями.
There is also a unit called managing assets and vulnerabilities.
Что же нам контролировать, да?
Well, there, naturally, we provide a list of everything that we are monitoring and controlling. So all the target systems, all key systems
Спасибо.
are shown there.
Заключительный вопрос.
This will be the last question.
Внедрение сервисной модели.
Have there been cases of successful implementation of such a service model? And are you planning to release this model publicly? A great one, isn't it?
Как и успешный опыт внедрения сервисной модели.
Yes, we do have successful implementation experience. Naturally, we implement such things first for ourselves before we start offering them to clients. Yes, we certainly want this model to be as public can be. Now we are preparing for publication, very detailed descriptions, with data points and tools and what have you. Why are we doing this? Well, A, because we want to get the feedback from the community, preferably on a regular basis. I mean, we have some experience, this is good. We've got some successful projects under our belts, but we understand that other companies are probably seeing a different slice of the market, so to speak, or the general picture. So there may very well be a need to fine-tune what we have. Okay, thank you very much.